You know, there can be a lot of conspiracies against the president, a lot of very complex assassination plots. This is the most basic, the most simple type of procedure, and how anyone, especially in these days of ISIS, and we're concerned about terrorist attacks, someone could actually get into the White House without being stopped is inexcusable.
The always bashful Congressman Peter King. But really, at this hour, there are so many questions about White House security after this shocking incident on Friday where a man with a knife got over the fence, across the lawn, in the door, that's right, in the door, within a flight of stairs to the Obama's living quarters before he was stopped. This is actually the interesting part of the video right here. Well, the suspect is an Iraq war vet, Omar Gonzalez of Texas. He might have had post-traumatic stress. He will face a judge today. This is simply not supposed to happen at the White House. Dave Wilkinson is a former Secret Service agent, now the president of the Atlanta Police Foundation. Dave, so many questions here. How did the man get so far before he was stopped? Through the door. Why wasn't the door locked? Why weren't the dogs unleashed? Why wasn't he shot? Explain the breakdown here.
Well, good morning, John. Well, as you can imagine, the Secret Service has a lot of fence jumpers throughout the year, jumping over the north side of the White House onto the White House grounds, and they respond to them every day. So they spend a lot of time training for this event as well as any other conceivable emergency. So you can imagine the disconcerting thing here is the fact the individual actually made it to the building and actually made it inside. You ask why the dogs weren't deployed. Of course, again, these agents are very highly trained to provide the amount of force necessary, basically, to stop the intruder. And quite honestly, John, the vast majority of these cases, the individual is mentally stable. The Secret Service saw immediately that this individual was not armed. This individual basically was running around the north ground. So basically what it ends up being a situation like on a Sunday football game. Basically, you've got officers basically chasing them around, trying to corral them in. But ultimately, the answer here is the fact there was no weapon there. The officers did not see anything else.
There was a 3-inch, serrated knife. Obviously, they couldn't see it, and they also don't know what's under his shirt or under his vest at the time. I suppose there is a legitimate question here. The Obama family was not there. They had left minutes before. Is it possible that agents were treating the situation much differently because they knew that the first family was not there?
No, that's not true. I mean, there is clearly protocols for protecting the White House at all times. And when the president there, of course, that security is heightened even more. But as you can imagine, even though the individual made it through the door, there are several levels of security still between that front door and the living area where the president and the first family would have been. But the reality of it is unacceptable that the individual made it to the door. This is obviously seen as a security breach by the Secret Service. And having spent over 22 years there myself, I can tell you they will do a very thorough assessment, and they'll make sure this doesn't happen again. But again, I have to say that you asked why the individual wasn't shot. Snipers are on the roof, basically. They had this individual trained in their sights from the moment he came over the fence. You had uniformed special response officers were all surrounding him. Any of them could have shot him at any given time or released the dog on him. The reality of it is basically there was no weapon in sight, basically, and it wasn't seen appropriate at that time to take that type of action. And I think if they had, we'd have a very different story right now.
No, you bring up a fair point there, but it certainly is cause to reassess the security protocols. Maybe, at a minimum, lock the door. Dave Wilkinson, great to have you with us. Appreciate your insight and your experience on this matter.
My pleasure.